Well, a warm welcome to today's talk, Wednesday the 8th of March. Now, today I want to look a little more about released WhatsApp messages related to the rate and the speed at which vaccines were approved. Are there questions to be asked there? I also want to look at the spring booster campaign for the United Kingdom. Basically, that's for over 75s, and it's very interesting, all the groups that are left out of that, as if they're kind of gradually moving away from this massive vaccination idea. And we'll also look at some data from the States where very few people are taking up booster offers compared to the whole population. But let's start off with this. This is really quite interesting, these leaked WhatsApp messages. Now, this is a headline from a newspaper. So, yeah, it's a headline from a newspaper. But COVID not deadly enough to fast-track vaccines, Chris Whitty, our Chief Medical Officer, advises ministers. And we will be backing all this up with the actual WhatsApp messages, which I'm sure they're not very happy about being released at all, but I believe is good for transparency. So let's look at this. Chief Medical Officer gave opinion in February 2020. Dominic Cummings was the main government prime ministerial aide in those days, after Israel announced its vaccination campaign. So Professor Chris Whitty told Matt Hancock, apparently, diseases with a mortality rate in the range of 1%. Now, we know that COVID never reached that. The very height of the most dangerous part of the epidemic, it reached about 0.6. Now, of course, the death rate from COVID is really, thankfully, very, very small. Especially for people without comorbidities, very, very small indeed. But Chris Whitty was aware of this, so actually the Chief Scientific Officer and the Chief Medical Officer come out reasonably well from this exchange. That's not always the case, as we saw 2 or 3 days ago. But here they are here. So diseases with a mortality rate in the range of 1% would need a very safe vaccine, because after all, we don't want to kill more people than we save, do we? In fact, that's not even the point. It's not a risk-benefit analysis in terms of, well, giving the vaccine, will that save more lives than people die? No, the vaccine has to have efficacy for the individual that takes it. This is the whole way that medicine should work. We don't say, well, we're prepared to sacrifice that dozen people there to save that 100 people there. No. We would only give a drug or a vaccine if it helps that individual. People have often lost sight of that principle, actually, when they've been talking about vaccines, which is rather unfortunate. So this is Chris Whitty. It would need to be very safe, and of course we agree with him completely. And clinical trials would be the rate-limiting step. And of course no vaccine has ever been approved as quickly as the COVID vaccines have been. Basically, they were started in January 2020 and we're giving them out in mass campaigns by December 2020. Very, very quick indeed. Now, this is the actual exchange here. So this is Dominic Cummings talking about the report in Israel. Is it true that in Israel they're going to be rolling out this vaccine really quite quickly? Based on a report from the Daily Mail newspaper in the UK. So Patrick Vallance here, Chief Medical Officer, are actually quite reasonable. Short answer is no. They have a vaccine for one thing, which hasn't been shown to work, and they want to adapt this for the virus, for this virus in humans, so changing a vaccine they already had. They would then need to go on to do safety testing, small-scale trials in people, that's phase 1 clinical trials, then larger efficacy trials, that's phase 2 and phase 3 trials. So it may all work out, but it is not going to be ready in weeks. All of these approaches will take many months at the very best, and most optimistic best, at the very best. Remember, we still don't have a vaccine for Zika. So Patrick Vallance quite clearly there saying, no, this is going to take some time. This is going to take some time, rightly, in this case, rightly so. And then this is particularly revealing. Chris Whitty, Chief Medical Officer. There will be a lot of good vaccine candidates that enter early clinical trials in the next few months. True, there were a lot of candidates. The rate limiting steps are late clinical trials for safety and efficacy, and then manufacturing. Well, the manufacturing was, of course, done at the same time as the clinical trial, so they could get it out quickly. So the clinical trial should take some time, he's saying there. For a disease with a low, for the sake of argument, and he's being very pessimistic there, 1%, mortality, a vaccine has to be very safe so that the safety studies can't be shortcut. So important for the long run. Actually, very wise words there from the Chief Medical Officer, of course, as we would expect. But were the politicians always listening is the question that now needs to be answered. So Chris Whitty quitting his role well there, as you would expect for a Chief Medical Officer. Now, there does seem to be quite a lot of political pressure. Now, of course, we don't know, but I'm just giving this as an example here. This is from Mr Cummings, talking to a group of MPs. He says this in May 2021, unarguable that vaccine trial processes should have happened more quickly. Well, of course, Dominic Cummings is not a doctor. He's basically a political advisor. So there you go. That was what he thought, though. He said it took literally hours for a vaccine to be invented in January 2020. Well, in a sense, yes, but this does show some, some might say scientific naivety, actually, in the way he's talking about this. Now, this was interesting. Challenge studies. Government should have recruited 5,000 to 10,000 for human challenge studies, because, of course, what we did for the original clinical trials is people were vaccinated and some people were given placebo. Then they were said, right, off you go, live life as normal. And we just had to wait for some of them to become infected, and the numbers were relatively small. And there were a lot of volunteers for human challenge trials, and human challenge trials were eventually done in January 2021. So human challenge trials, basically where people were very low risk, of course, are deliberately infected, and then seeing how they're protected by the vaccine would have generated a lot of data a lot more quickly. So that point has some validity. But I just put it there because you get the impression that he was kind of, come on, let's get going on this, rather than going through all the required stages. And we were assured time and time again that all the required stages had gone through. Let's hope that it's not transpiring now that there was any shortcuts taken. Moving on to the booster campaign for the UK. Now, this has just come out in the last day, I think, preparing for a successful spring 2023 COVID-19 booster campaign. This will run from the 17th of April to the 30th of June. And this time, they're not saying all children over the age of 5. They're not saying all children over the age of 12. They're not even saying all adults. They're just saying people over the age of 75. Now, the last time, the autumn booster, that was the cut-off at 50 there. So you get the impression that they are limiting this vaccine to more and more people as they realise the risk-benefit analysis has dramatically changed now that we have so much natural immunity. But that's never mentioned in the paper. So this is absolutely booming loud and clear to me. Don't vaccinate people that are under 75 unless they've got particular risk factors. What a dramatic change in the government's position without saying they've changed. Dramatic change without saying they've changed. That's the way I interpret this. So risk-benefit analysis in the over 75s. Yes, there is a different risk-benefit analysis. But however, the rate of significant adverse events, as far as we know from the reanalysis of the original trials, is about 1 in 800, 1 in 900, 1 in 1,000. So even in the over 75s, the risk-benefit analysis is really quite questionable. And of course, the longevity of any benefit is very, very short. So even this is questionable, but such a massive improvement. So pleased to see that the government are no longer recommending booster doses for young people. And the idea that not that long ago, the government was still recommending vaccinations for young men with mRNA vaccines is just, I think there's going to be more to come on that. But we'll leave it for now. We'll just look at what we've got to look at tonight. So residents in care home for older adults, individuals who have immunocompromised is what they're saying. And they're prepared to vaccinate just 6 months after the previous dose. What a pathetic duration of effect they are now talking about. Now, this was the millions able to book their booster. This was for the autumn last year. And I've just put this in because there's a couple of things I hadn't noticed before, and it really was quite appalling in my view. This is an NHS official site, and these are like happy customers they've put on here. So resident Jean Rosebrook. I wanted the vaccine so it doesn't go around the carers and other residents. So this official NHS website was happy to intimate, shall we say, that the vaccines are stopping the spread of infection, stopping transmission from person to person. The idea that they would still be saying that when we've seen such massive reinfection in Omicron, and yet they seem to be happy to give the impression that vaccinate yourself to protect those around you. And if that's what Jean thought, I think that's really appalling. Did Jean take the vaccine because she thought she was protecting those around her? I mean, if that's what she believed, then bless her for being kind to others. But it just flies in the face of what we know. And this is still official. I just copied this from the government website today. I really think this should be updated. And again, start Tom Spinks. I want to get the booster because it keeps everyone safe and gives me peace of mind. No, really, they shouldn't be giving the impression, in my view, that the vaccine is preventing transmission. That wasn't never even tested in the original trials, as we found out in those European hearings. Now, I just want to do a little bit about the CDC in the States. Now, they're still going ahead with their publicity for the vaccine. COVID vaccines are safe, effective and free. Now, this is from their website today. So on their website today, the Centers for Disease Control said COVID vaccines are safe, effective and free. Well, they're free, that's for sure. But to still say they're safe and effective now, in what we know, and that's what the CDC are officially saying, and it must be right because, look, we've got people here who are looking happy and they've got thumbs up and they're all proudly sporting their elastoplasts. That's what the CDC are saying. Now, I also checked on the CDC, and it said this. This is direct from the CDC website today. Updated boosters are recommended. So CDC recommends one updated booster dose, that's after the original dose, for everyone aged over 5 years and older who completed their primary series. This is children that are currently 5 years and a day old. They're recommending this for children as young as that. And the risk for disease, especially in times where we have so much natural immunity now, is vanishingly small. And yet they still want to give them mRNA vaccines. It really, this really is distressing for me to read this out. And for children aged 6 months to 4 years who've completed the Moderna primary series. So CDC are currently recommending booster doses of vaccine for 6-month-old children. Absolutely incredible. We're not allowed to say that's wrong, of course, on this channel. We're not allowed to disagree with the CDC, but that is what they're saying. I'm just going to read that out again to make sure I haven't made a mistake. Updated boosters are recommended for children 6 months to 4 years. It is saying that. They are recommending boosters for 6-month-old children in this clever, sophisticated country, United States of America. Now, are people taking this up? Well, 16.2% of the population have taken up the booster option. So it looks like people in the States are voting with their feet. So what's 100 take away 16.2? I don't know, 84% or so have not taken up the offer of a booster vaccine. So that is interesting. More independent thought perhaps going on in the United States. Now, in terms of the figures in the States. So cases are going down, as we see, but they're still there. Of course, if you test, people are still testing positive. And this will remain the same for the next 20 years because we're now endemic, and we're going to be endemic for a good period of time. No way round that. This is hospitalizations here in the States. Again, going down at the moment, which is encouraging. Now, I do hope you caught yesterday's video with Dr. Sunil Dand, who's a practicing physician in the States. He agreed with what I've been learning from the UK, that we're not seeing people in with the acute respiratory distress, sort of COVID pneumonia anymore. Very, very, very rare we're seeing that now. Who we're seeing admitted in the States now are people with a lot of comorbidities and people that are quite frail anyway, who can't cope with any additional infection. So they're the amount of people admitted now. And we know that the majority of people in the UK are now admitted with COVID. It's coincidental finding rather than for COVID. And it's people with comorbidities that the COVID is exacerbating comorbidities. We're not getting the COVID pneumonia. The risk-benefit analysis has changed dramatically. The risk is much, much less now with Omicron and natural immunity. So hospitalizations down there looking promising trend at the moment. But if we look at the age profile as well in the States, of course, we see that the vast majority are in the older age groups, with progressively younger age groups as we go down. Deaths in the United States are still there, mostly people with significant comorbidities. And I think we're in a position to say now why the death rate in the States has been so high. Older population, of course, and the next reason why it's high, we can answer it in one simple word, and that word is obesity. Increased levels of obesity in the States have been the major factor, as well as age, secondary to age, contributing to the excess death figures in the States, which are really quite appalling. Really quite a wake-up call for people in the Western world, especially the States, to eat less refined food, eat more fruit and vegetables, and lose weight. Obesity is a big, big problem. Good food's hard to find in the States. Ultra-processed food is easy to find. That really needs to change. So those deaths are still there, tragically, for those reasons. Nothing like it was, of course, in the earlier waves. And I think that's all I wanted to say today, really. So main thing is information starting to trickle out that the vaccine program was rushed, contrary to the advice of our chief medical officer and scientific officer. Let's hope there was no undue political influence there. You get the impression that the revelations that are being sort of leaked out day by day by the Telegraph, and I'm just a bit concerned they're keeping, I wouldn't say the best till last, but maybe the most distressing till last. Let's hope that's not the case. More to come in the next few days. And isn't it shouting out loudly that we're not offering booster doses to under 75s anymore? We'll never get the government admitting they were wrong. Of course, politicians don't do that, unfortunately, but they are moving in a direction to offer vaccines to less and less people, which is good because more and more natural immunity is coming on. Pity there's not more talk about vitamin D, zinc, good diet, exercise, losing weight, all the other things that can help immunity, but they don't really talk about that. They're just talking about vaccines still, even though they're advising them for fewer and fewer sections of the population. So we'll leave it there. More to come on these revelations. I don't plan on doing any more of them unless there's something really particularly relevant, I think, to the public health interest, because we're not really interested in tittle-tattle. We want to know what is relevant to your health and indeed my health. Thank you for watching.